And now to a disturbing crime alert. A woman accused of posing as a caregiver is now behind bars. Investigators say that she crafted a sinister scheme.
She was 101 years old. She had outlived her husband by 25 years. She had outlived two of her three children. She had worked as a nurse for decades in western Pennsylvania, caring for strangers in their most vulnerable moments. She lived frugally. She attended church. She saved. And by early 2026, according to court records, she was 3 or 4 months away from not being able to pay her assisted living bill. Not because her savings had run out, because someone had taken them. $230,000. Gone. Drained from the bank account of a 101-year-old woman by the person she had moved in with. The person she was paying to keep her safe. This was not a hacker. This was not a scam call from overseas. This was not a stranger who stole a card. This was someone who lived in the same house, ate at the same table, and collected a salary of $1,400 a month, specifically to care for Phyllis Hood in the final years of her life. So what does it look like when the person you trusted to protect you is the person taking everything? And why, when this was all over, did the court tell the family the sentence needed to be shorter so the perpetrator could go back to work? To understand that, you have to go back to Beaver County, Pennsylvania, October 2023. Beaver County sits about 30 miles northwest of Pittsburgh. It is the kind of place where people are known by their church, their profession, their decades of quiet presence in the same community. Phyllis Hood was known there. She was a nurse. She had spent her career taking care of people who could not take care of themselves, and she had done it for long enough that by the time she reached her late 90s, the irony would have been almost unbearable to her family. The woman who had given her professional life to caring for others would now need someone to care for her. This is the window where trust becomes a vulnerability. When an elderly person can no longer manage alone, the family faces a choice. A licensed facility, which can run $7,500 a month or more, a home health agency, which has some oversight but is expensive and not always consistent, or a private arrangement. A private arrangement is the most personal and often the most affordable option, and that is precisely what makes it the most dangerous. There is no licensing body checking in. There is no required audit of the finances. There is no supervisor watching the account. There is just a handshake, a salary agreement, and the hope that the person who shows up every day is who they say they are. Anna Kugel, 46 years old, of Beaver County, was that person. According to court documents, Hood moved in with Kugel in October of 2023. Kugel was being paid $1,400 a month to provide care. That was the arrangement. That was the trust. And by the time anyone from Hood's family was able to intervene, more than $230,000 had been taken from Hood's account. Here is what most people do not think about when an elderly relative moves in with a private caregiver. In most cases, the caregiver gains practical access to everything. They handle the mail. They accompany the person to appointments. They become the daily interface with banks, pharmacies, utility providers, and anyone else who calls. An elderly person who is frail, potentially hard of hearing, possibly experiencing some degree of cognitive slowing, often does not have a clear second set of eyes on the account. They trust the person in the house. That is why they move there. And if that person has access to account credentials, bank cards, or checkbooks, the theft can happen incrementally. A withdrawal here, a transfer there. Small enough not to trigger an alarm in any single transaction. Large enough, over months, to drain a lifetime of savings before anyone on the outside thinks to look. That is the mechanism. Not a dramatic heist. Not a forged signature on a single massive check. A slow, steady, systematic emptying of an account that belonged to a woman who was too frail, too isolated, and too trusting to see it happening. Phyllis Hood had already seen enough hardship for one life. She had been a widow for 25 years. She had raised 3 children and helped raise a grandson. 2 of her sons died before she did. Her surviving daughter lives in a wheelchair in a separate care facility. Hood could not lean on her children. She could not lean on a partner. What she had was what she had saved. Decades of frugal living. Decades of working as a nurse and setting money aside. And according to court records, more than $230,000 of that lifetime savings was taken from her. When her nieces, Lindsay Finken and her sister, finally gained direct access to their aunt, what they found was a woman who had been stripped of the financial cushion that was supposed to give her dignity in the last chapter of her life. The facility where Hood spent her final months Franciscan Manor in Beaver Falls, charged approximately $7,500 a month. Hood's income from Social Security and a couple of small pensions totaled about $1,900 a month. That left a gap of roughly $5,600 every single month. The family tried to fill it from what remained, and what remained, after the theft, was only the proceeds from the sale of Hood's home, about $100,000. Finken said they had to be very frugal toward the end. The family wanted to bring in additional aides to give Hood more support. They were told that extra help would cost approximately $4,000 more a month. They could not afford it. The money that had been taken was the money that was supposed to make that possible. Before we go further, if you have a parent, a grandparent, or anyone older in your life who could be exposed to something like this case carries a warning worth keeping. I have put together a free scam-proof retirement guide built around the exact warning signs cases like this keep showing us, how this kind of fraud works, what to watch for, and the questions to ask before it is too late. You can grab it through the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. It is free, and it is built to be shared with the people who need it most. The case broke open not because a bank flagged something, not because a government agency ran a routine audit. It broke open because someone made an anonymous phone call. In January of 2025, the Beaver County Office of Aging received an anonymous tip that Phyllis Hood might be the victim of exploitation. That single tip is what started everything. Hood's niece, Lindsay Finken, wrote in her victim impact statement this spring, and I am quoting her directly here, that in January of 2025, she and her sister, with the help of the Beaver County Office of Aging, went to where their aunt was living, moved Phyllis and whatever belongings she had left, and brought her to the facility where she would spend her final months. By that point, according to court records, the money was largely gone. The case proceeded through the Beaver County court system in Pennsylvania. Anna Kugel, 46 years old, pleaded guilty to charges related to the theft of Hood's money. On the 29th of April 2026, she was sentenced. The sentence was 5 months of house arrest and 7 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay $100,000 in restitution through monthly payments of $250. Before we go further, please help get this story in front of more people. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It genuinely helps these warnings reach the families who need them. And if you know someone elderly, recently retired, or in any position where one trusted person handles their money, share this video with them. One conversation could keep another family from finding out too late. Now, $230,000 stolen, $100,000 in ordered restitution. That means $130,000 of what was taken from Phyllis Hood is simply not covered by the court order. And the restitution that is ordered, it will arrive in payments of $250 a month. At that rate, it would take over 33 years to pay back the $100,000 the court ordered returned. Phyllis Hood died on the 27th of May 2026 at Franciscan Manor. She did not live to see a single check clear. And then came the detail that Finken put in her victim impact statement, the detail that stayed with the family long after sentencing. According to Finken, the family was encouraged to accept a shorter house arrest for Kugel so that she would be able to work sooner and make the restitution payments sooner. The system, in other words, had to weigh the perpetrator's earning capacity against the punishment for what she had done, and the family was asked to consent to a lighter sentence so the math of repayment could work. That is the systemic failure this case exposes, not just one bad actor in a private home, a legal and financial ecosystem that, when confronted with elder financial exploitation, regularly finds itself in the position of trading accountability for practicality, sentencing guidelines that have not kept pace with the scale of the harm, restitution orders that look meaningful on paper and are mathematically irrelevant in practice, and a private caregiving market with almost no systematic oversight of what happens to an elderly person's finances once a caregiver is inside the house. According to the AARP, more than $20 billion is stolen from elderly Americans by caregivers, friends, and family in a single year. $20 billion. That is not a rounding error. That is a systemic crisis that plays out in 101-year-old women, in quiet rooms, in arrangements where the most dangerous person in the building is the one who is supposed to be there. So, what can you actually do? Here are 5 things drawn directly from what went wrong in this case. First, no private caregiver should have unsupervised access to accounts, cards, or checkbooks. If a caregiver needs to help with purchases, a dedicated prepaid card with a low balance is a far safer approach than handing over debit card access to a primary savings account. Second, set up read-only account alerts for a trusted family member or attorney. Most banks allow a secondary email or phone number to receive transaction alerts. A family member does not need to control the money to be able to watch it. Third, use the Office of Aging in your county. The Beaver County Office of Aging is exactly what broke this case open, because someone called them. Every county in the United States has some form of an adult protective services or area agency on aging. Know the number before you need it. Fourth, if you have a private caregiver arrangement, build in a regular financial review. Once a month, a family member or trusted third party should be looking at the account statements alongside the elderly person if possible. The exploitation in this case was able to continue because there was no outside eye on the money. Fifth, if something feels wrong, report it anonymously. The tip that saved Phyllis Hood from dying without a roof over her head was an anonymous call. The system has intake mechanisms specifically for people who are not sure what they saw, but know something is not right. Use them. Phyllis Hood spent her whole working life taking care of people who needed her. She earned the right to a dignified end. She had saved for it. She had planned for it. And the person she invited into her home took it from her, $230,000 at a time, while she was too frail and too trusting to see it going. The money that was supposed to pay for her final comfort, her additional care, her peace of mind, became the instrument of someone else's benefit. And the system that was supposed to respond measured its response in 5 months of house arrest and $250 a month. Here is what stays with me about this case. Phyllis Hood was a nurse. Her entire professional life was an act of care for strangers. And in the end, the only person who cared enough to save her was a stranger who made an anonymous phone call to a county office. Without that call, she would have run out of money and had nowhere to go. Who is the trusted person inside the life of your elderly relative right now? And does anyone else have eyes on what is happening to their money? Because the next case in our files involved a woman who did not move in with a private caregiver. She hired someone to help her run errands and take her to appointments, someone she believed was there to help. And what that person took from her was not just money. It was an entire estate, built over a lifetime, transferred piece by piece, and the last check was written the day after the victim died.